My hometown, part 2. In the year 1751, an impoverished 16-year-old Frenchman named Claude Martin landed in Pondicherry. To call him amazing would do him an injustice. His loyalty was famously for sale, and he offered his talents as a mercenary to the highest bidder. Like Groucho Marx, he had principles. And if you don't like those, I have others. For the next 60 years, this genius had a roller coaster of a life. He was a thief, a moneylender, smoked opium, had four official wives and scores of unofficial wives, all of them are native, and dozens of children in and out of wedlock. He struck coins, cast cannons, farmed indigo, collected books and paintings, practiced astronomy, designed and built houses and palaces, laid out gardens, invented primitive air cooling devices, made gunpowder, and experimented with air pumps, steam engines, magnetic equipment, and hot air balloons. The wise writer chronicler Rosie Llewellyn Jones described him as a very ingenious man, while a contemporary Lloyd Valentia was less charitable. A more infamous or despicable character than General Martin Clady never existed. He had not a single virtue, though he labored to assume the appearance of several. The aforementioned activities naturally made Claude Martin exceedingly rich. He was perhaps the richest man in Awadh at that time. He lent money to various upper class gentry at high rates of interest, and when they were unable to pay him back, he would take property and land in return. He won one of the three schools he founded in a cockfight. Why such a controversial individual should want to be the founder of three schools? One in Loyan, that is, in his birthplace, second in Lucknow, and the third in Calcutta remains a mystery. Perhaps after all the extravagant sins, he wished for partial redemption. A couple of kilometers away from the heart of the city stands Constantia or La Martiniere College. A visitor to Lucknow is instantly gobsmacked by the imagination and ambition of the developer. Claude Martin himself planned and designed Constantia to the last detail, and professional architects tear their hair trying to comprehend what creative impulse he had in mind. The building is an architectural khichdi conforming to no known architectural style. It may be bizarre, confused, grotesque, but it is also undoubtedly awesome. While it confirms that Claude Martin suffered from delusions of grandeur, it also confirms his eclecticism of taste. Huge stone lions and statues adorn the ramparts. On the terrace of the college stand three cannons. The one in the middle was cast by Martin himself in Lucknow in 1786 and named Lord Cornwallis. The other two cannons appear to be part of the battery that drove the 1857 mutineers out of the college. Bang in the middle of the campus is a monstrous phallic symbol jutting out of an artificial lake. It is called the Lot. No one till date has been able to decode what purpose this object was intended to serve in the Frenchman's scheme of things. In 1952, I was admitted to La Martiniere College, which began functioning in 1845. History records that the students fought with distinction and bravery in 1857, defending Lucknow in India's first war of independence. This was for some of us a problematic honor post 1947. Mostly, the college celebrated the courage rather than the patriotism of the young fighters. When I entered La Martiniere, it was full of Anglo Indian and Indian Christian boys. The Anglo Indians lorded it over us natives. They had a slightly menacing look, and it was not uncommon to find a strapping fellow of around 30 still sitting for his senior Cambridge. I remember one called Kekasi. He was over 6 feet and resembled a 500-pound gorilla. He had failed his senior Cambridge 7 times. Since these fellows were foundationers, that is, they were fed, clothed, and educated free as per Martin's will, failing held no terrors. We were mortally scared of them since most were prefects. They looted our tiffin carriers, robbed us. In their eyes, we were desi and doomed, while they talked loftily of going home, even though home actually was places like Bareilly or Allahabad. I felt rather sorry for them. At school, I was a hopeless pupil. Whether this was due to my stupidity or my casual approach, I cannot be sure. I had at the time only one goal: to somehow pass every year. If I failed, I would get a rocket from my parents. They did not seem particularly worried by the low grades I got. They were just relieved to see me move up the ladder one step at a time. The accumulation of knowledge, information, enlightenment, expertise, these attainments did not seem to me to be important or useful. Did my poverty play any part in my inability to achieve scholastic excellence? While it is true that I never had enough money to buy all the prescribed gear, that is, textbooks, dissecting sets, rulers, compasses, carpentry tools, special exercise books, pens, etc., I had no difficulty in borrowing them. You could say I survived in school through the kindness of strangers. Even if I could afford the books, I doubt if my grades would have been any better. I guess I was neither dense nor brilliant. My intellectual potential lay in between, veering possibly towards the dense. Something did grab my interest. I was not sensitive enough to understand the subtle nuances of Shakespeare's Macbeth, but I took an instant liking to Lady Macbeth and an instant aversion to Macbeth, who I thought was a bit of a wimp, while the lady seemed to me to be needlessly vilified as scheming and shameless by the teacher who taught us this tragedy in Shakespeare canon. I also thought the Bard's play Henry V was a riot. Three roguish characters, Pistol, Nym, and Bardolph, remain etched in my memory. One of these rogues uttered the immortal lines: There is throats to be cut and works to be done. Sir John Falstaff, whose nose was red 24/7 because of the enormous amount of ale he consumed, and his wife, Doll Tearsheet, were other characters I was drawn to. Later on in life, I was informed that King Henry's speech on the eve of Battle of Agincourt, once more unto the breach, dear friends, was the greatest war speech ever made, even better than Churchill's We shall fight them on the beaches. I didn't think it was so hard at school. Even Laurence Oliver's masterly oration of the pep talk, which I heard in the film of the play, left me cold. However, the story that made the maximum impact on my young and ignorant mind was Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. Reading it and hearing it read aloud in class would make my hair stand on end. The dark, stormy night, the sick old pirate drunk on a rum alone in a deserted house, the arrival of the black spot, an omen that bad things were going to happen to him, the young Jim Hawkins, the comically sinister one legged buccaneer Long John Silver with a parrot perched on his shoulder, played memorably among others by Orson Welles, and the touching relationship between the 12-year-old Jim Hawkins and the cutthroat Long John Silver excited me to no end. La Martiniere in the 50s and 60s was possibly the most famous school in Uttar Pradesh. It had an enviable record as far as producing first raters was concerned. I tried my best to undo its academic reputation, but did not succeed. I had further one disability. My spelling was atrocious, and this handicap has plagued me all through life. I was relieved to learn that numerous eminent statesmen and men of letters suffered from an identical weakness. John F. Kennedy, the playwright John Osborne, journalist Walter Lippmann, and Carl Bernstein. The other deficiency, minor, I realize now, but considered unforgivable at school, was my habit of not crossing the letter T and dotting the letter I. I forget how many times I was punished for the lapse. The master who got exasperated by my determination to ignore elementary language rules was a Quaker called Penn Berkeley. He was an Englishman straight out of E.M. Forster, well meaning, gentle, soft spoken, convinced that the British came to India on a civilizing mission, and when that mission was completed, they got up and left. He had been in correspondence with Gandhi and was positive that divide and rule was a piece of national fiction. According to him, if the British had not kept Hindus and Muslims apart, the two communities would have slaughtered each other. Partition, he thought, was a very sensible idea. One of the things I remember him for is in class one day he took a piece of chalk and, apropos of nothing, wrote on the blackboard. Life in its impartiality sees to it that we who bring suffering into the lives of those are paid back in the same intensity of suffering. Could be straight out of Bhagavad Gita. Thank you for listening.